Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next Ask Me Anything. I'm in my dark basement, so I apologize for any lighting, but you should still be able to see my screen pretty well. It is going to just be me today. My name is Kayla. I'm the founder, CEO of Operation Childcare Project, a military spouse myself. My team is taking a much needed break today, and so you get me. I would like to switch this over so that you see more of it and less of me. Let me see if that's possible. There we go. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about the military fee assistance updates. There were some that came out after the government opened that we didn't get a lot of clarity on. I have gotten some updates and I've also seen your questions. So as far as whether the government shutdown is impacting the fee assistance, we have some months before that actually happens. The delays that you are seeing now existed before the government shutdown. If you were on the Navy, Coast Guard, DoD civilian side, they had been struggling with payments and processing for quite a few months already. And then if you were on the Army, Air Force, Space Force, Marine Corps side, you know that was also a very slow processing time. So as of right now, nothing has changed in either of those offices. It is still a delayed processing. What we want to talk about today, if you did not know, is that a memo did come out. It was in our last newsletter that talked about how they are shifting the fee assistance, the rate caps in the total family income categories. This impacts quite a few of you. And so that's what I really want to kind of dig into today is what does that mean for you? And then how do we prepare for it? So the memo came out in, I believe it was late August, early September. I have it linked into the slide deck. And what it did was it did two things. One was shift the total family income categories to being 11 or 12 instead of 11. It also raised the rate cap. So for those of you who are at CDC, FCC, that probably doesn't make much sense to you. But if you are using the CCYH program, which is the nanny program, or any of the military fee assistance programs to offset your cost off the installation, then you should be familiar with what a rate cap is. So the rate cap was $1,800. What that means is that you look at what you would normally pay at the CDC based on your total family income, and then the rate cap. And whatever the difference is between those two and what your care costs is how much assistance you should anticipate to get. There are a lot of misconceptions around that. And so this might be news to some of you. Some people do believe that if they have the fee assistance, they will pay no more than they do at the CDC or FCC. And that's not accurate. It is capped. That cap has not changed in many years, despite the cost of care continuing to rise. So this was going to be the first time that we saw a shift from 1,800 to 2,000. So what does this mean for you all? If you're at the CDC, FCC school aftercare program, the total family income change means that families in the highest income category, you will now be responsible for more payments. Your amount is going to go up. If you're in the military fee assistance programs, you're going to have two implications. One is, again, the total family income, because everything is really based off of what you would pay at the CDC for all these military programs, as well as we now have the $2,000 rate cap. So those of you who are paying more than $2,000 per month per child at different locations across the US, you will now likely get a little more assistance unless you are now in a higher total family income category. And then the child care in your home program. So this is the one that subsidizes private care. They did implement the total family income raise there as well. So now there's another category there, but they did not raise your rate cap. So what that means is if you were already at the top of that income bracket, you are now going to be getting less subsidy. So you will be responsible for more of those payments. So this is kind of where we're going to spend a good bit of our time here. So there was originally 14 total family income categories. This was years ago. There was a shift to ensure that it was never more than 7% of any family's total family income. That was a heavy lift by many people across the nation, the stakeholders here, to get all of those shifted so that everyone was paying a little bit less each month. That was a little more proportional. While that was capped at 7%. It was per child and not per family. So we do frequently see families who have multiple children at CDCs or FCCs are still paying usually between 14 to 20% of their income, because it goes up, it kind of doubles. It's not capped at just that 7%. But the reduction to the 11 categories, that was supposed to try to level set that a bit. Let me show you, let me share my screen. Let me show you what the old total family income categories were, so we can get a visual. Okay, so these were the old total family incomes. The potential for someone to be in those categories, that 1 to 3, is a bit rare. I did a little quick calculations for you all just so that you had an idea of what something like that would look like and why it matters. What I used was Joint Base San Antonio, because they are standard cost. They're considered a standard cost installation. There is no high, low there. So if we are going to assume that someone is an E2 and they have less than 2 years of service, I had pulled these calculations out, and they are a single service member, meaning there is no other income coming in, and they have one child, their total family income is around $61,960. So that automatically puts an E2 with less than 2 years in Cat 3. And even if I shifted that, I did a little experiment in it here, shifted that to a E1 who is single, also a JBSA, they're still at around $53,400. So Cat 2. So this is about as low as you can get in any possible scenario, assuming you are single with a child and you literally just joined. There's really no one that falls into Cat 1, and rare for someone to fall into Cat 2. And this does assume that this single parent is not getting child support. They're not getting any special pay, no bonuses, anything, because all of that would contribute to their total family income and raise them up in what they are responsible for. So if we look at something that's a little more standard, like an E5 who is single, again, no extra support, no child support, no nothing. If they have 4 years of service, being generous here, one child, they are still in over $78,000. So they are at Cat 5. When we go through the total family income, when you're looking at if you're looking at our rate sheet, let me get our rate sheets up so that you can play with this yourself. So when you're looking at our rate sheets here, we always recommend to use this 2-week vacation option. This is for the fee assistance process. You have to include the total family income. So everything, if you're married, your spouse's income is added into that. Child support, any kind of special bonus pay, all of those things go together. So what I also did was look at San Antonio, and what the average salary was, assuming someone is married. Here we go. Assuming someone is married with an average salary in San Antonio is around $52,000, that E5 is now at 9 because they get pushed up over the 130,000. Your BAH does get included in your total family income. It doesn't matter if it's taxable by the federal government, it is included here. So the point of this exercise is really to demonstrate that they added an extra income category here, which I'll flip over to here so you can see. They added this extra income category it was in an attempt to standardize and make it a little more fair across the board. But the reality is that these categories 1 through 3 are rarely used. They are rarely touched. So the more equitable way to have done this would have been to actually change all of these, to eliminate the 1 through 3 or shift all of them down so that they're all paying a little bit less. So we now have 12, sorry, I'll get used to that, 12 total family income categories. So the memo came out that they are changing the income categories, that the branches need to get new certificates out to everybody. This was from DOD, big DOD down to branches. They were to get new certificates out to everybody and prepare for the new calculations to take effect November 1. The government shut down. So some locations did still push out their memo. And so this is where you're going to see, especially, and I'll show you kind of in our slide deck, you're going to see The original announcement of the change, if you're on the Navy side, it's going to be Navy is handling themselves and DoD civilians, as well as every CCYH branch. If you're on the Army side, they really only announced it to those who are in CDC's FCCs that they would be implementing this November 1. But all of that did get pulled back. So what that means is that it is postponed. They are not changing the categories. And I know that's probably really frustrating to a lot of you because this would have been really beneficial right now for those of you who are not in that top category, because they did raise that rate cap to get a little bit extra assistance. Right now, they have not said when that is going to come back in, or if they are going to back pay any of that. We have not had really any communication around that fact so far. If you have any individual questions about this, let me get back to here. If you have any individual questions about your situation, feel free to drop those into the chats and I will go through them as we go. But I have linked everything here. If you are curious about what the memo says, you can come here and look. If you are Air Force, Space Force, Marine Corps, or Coast Guard, there is radio silence on your side. So there has been no announcement of how they're shifting anything. When that does happen, we will push it out through our newsletter and of course through our social media channels so that you're aware. But as of right now, no one is changing anything. When it does get changed, we have started updating our calculator. So you can take a look at what does this mean for your family. Let me pull that up and we'll walk through this together. So if you're on our calculator website or on our website right now, which is under our resources, our fee assistance calculator, we are going to be updating branding, but all of our resources will stay. We do still have the 2025 total family income categories here for now. We will update it as soon as we have an idea of what's happening moving forward. We do keep both calculators here. So if you don't already know how much you would pay at the CDC, this is where you need to take a second and figure that out. You're going to need that number before you get started. So if we keep our example here of the E5, we will assume E5 is married and they have a median income, so they're going to be Cat 9. So what you're going to look at is 760. So 760 is going to be the amount that you would be responsible for per month if you were at the CDC. Then you can go back to our calculator and you need to know how much the civilian center that you intend to use, how much is that location charging you? It's usually per week, which is what this calculator is built for. If you are being given a monthly rate instead of a weekly rate at a civilian center off the installation that you want to use fee assistance for, you can just divide that by 4.33, and that'll get you what they will use as a calculation. This is very much for estimating purposes. So as of, we're going to stick with, let's stick with Air Force, Space Force, because they have not updated theirs. So you put in, let's say that I have a child and they are an infant, and so it's going to be very expensive care. So this care is going to cost me somewhere around $425 a week. And my monthly CDC rate, remember we just looked at the chart, is going to be $760. So what this calculator does is looks at your rate cap, which was $1,800. What is your total monthly care cost calculation? And then breaks down for you how much you should anticipate in fee assistance. Keep in mind, this goes to the provider, not to you as a family. It is a reimbursement model. And then how much you should anticipate paying yourselves. And this is assuming that there is not a meal pilot here. The meal pilot, it's still being called a pilot, but it seems like it is sticking. What the meal pilot does, if you want to trial that as well, is you just scroll down. This is really for if your care is under the rate cap, which this one is over the rate cap. But if your care is under the rate cap and you are having to pay for meals, you can get more assistance. So an example here is, say, let's pretend that my meals are included in this tuition. Yes. Is my cost higher than the 1,800 rate cap? Also, yes. And I'm not charged extra. So you'll see that it'll automatically calculate for you how much assistance you should anticipate and how much you as a family should anticipate paying. You're welcome to email these results to yourself. We don't do anything with your personal information. You can just get it sent right away. You don't have to sign up for anything. We can also shift this. So let's assume that it is a little bit lower. So we're going to go with 325 this time. Oh man, I did that twice. And you'll see this shift. So now I'm not over the 1800. So if meals are not included in tuition and it is not higher, so if you're having to pay extra for meals or you need to bring them in, this does apply to infants needing formula as well, but only full-time care. You see here that it was 675 was the estimated assistance, with 760 being what the family me should anticipate paying. Oops, it didn't update. Is your care? Oh, because I didn't click no. Yes, there we go. So now you will see it shift. So you can use this calculator to kind of anticipate what your cost should be. We have updated this for Navy, DoD civilian with the new rate caps. So it would work the exact same way. You just now have your $2,000 rate cap. So for those of you who are in higher cost of living areas, I was very surprised by cost of care in Wisconsin. So I'm going to use that one. We had someone who had $525 a week per child. What they're going to be able to do now is get a little more assistance with that. And the meal pilot sticks. So the meal pilot still applies to this situation. We also have a calculator kind of using that same premise. We will update it with the updated rate caps as well for the CCYH program, if you want to estimate what that is as well, which is right here. And this is intended to be used per child. So you're going to say, I have 2 children here. I'm going to say that my provider is charging $25 an hour. They are working 45 hours a week. And then my monthly rate will just stick with 760 to keep it easy. It will automatically calculate out for you how much you should anticipate having to pay. This is an estimate, does not include taxes or overtime or any other legal obligations you have in your state, and how much assistance you should anticipate getting. If it is 2 children, you should anticipate this per child. So that does double out as you go. Like I said, the rate cap did not change for the CCYH program. They only implemented new categories, which means that if you were in those higher ones, then you're probably going to be getting less assistance. And let me check my chat really quick. So the question about whether someone has a question on whether they should not be charged for November if you were impacted. We don't know that yet. So ideally, oh no, have you guys not gotten to see me do any of those calculations? I should have clicked back to make sure that this was sharing. Hold on. If someone wants to come in the chat and tell me whether they got to see any of those calculations that I just did or not, please let me know. But as far as the question of whether you're going to be charged for November if you were impacted, we have asked about what families should anticipate as part of this, and they have released none of that information. Given how difficult it is to get back pay when this is at no fault of the families, I don't anticipate that they are going to proactively offer that kind of additional amount to the families, especially since they did release the statements about how they are not going to, how it's postponed until further notice. They didn't give a date. It wasn't, we'll take care of this in December. They pretty much said until further notice, don't anticipate this shifting. In our case management, of course, we will continue helping families navigate that because it was pushed down that it should have been released out at that time. So it was really the branches not getting that guidance together quick enough for families to where that could be implemented on time. So we absolutely plan to make this an argument in our case management, in our accountability process, to help families who would have gotten more assistance get more assistance that way. Okay. Some of these I've already answered. These were some questions that came in through our chat. When will it be implemented? We don't know. We didn't even get to hear from Air Force, Space Force, or Marine Corps regarding whether or when they plan to implement this. Army only talked about how they were implementing it at their CDCs and FCCs, so their DoD operated care. And Navy is the only one who did push out that they would be doing this entire shift, but they didn't push out any of those certificates. And as I said, there are still people in office right now. I understand they are furloughed, so they have a lot happening, but we have heard absolutely nothing. So we're not sure when that's going to be implemented. Coast Guard families, you were supposed to get a higher rate cap in general last year, and that never happened. We have followed up multiple times, and it seems like they just have not allocated that funding in. What does the higher rate cap mean? We did talk through that. The higher rate cap means that those of you who are in high cost areas, you are paying, and this is a per child, your normal amount for your care would be over $2,000 or over $1,800 per month per child. You're going to get a little bit more assistance. So it's really just, it seems like it's starting to catch up to a system that kind of sped along, and the DoD was behind in that. The question is, why are parents being charged for care on holidays when the centers, and they decided to implement a readiness or resilience day? It's days we cannot have care, but it still charges it a DoD thing. So actually, no. It is very typical for civilian centers to work in that you have to pay. This is a really unique thing about DoD operated care. Most centers do not give you vacation. If you want to put in for vacation time, you still have to pay for that vacation time. Days that you have to pull your child out early, days that holidays, all of those are kind of built into civilian centers operations, that it needs to be divided out. That way they can still pay their employees over those times. Otherwise, it would be very hard, since the employees, at least on the civilian side, they're not getting much income. So if you then say, well, you're also not going to get paid for December, they operate on these really thin margins. So it is really typical to continue charging for those times. What I will say is different in this situation, and it's an amazing point to kind of highlight here from our commenter, is that civilian centers are not subsidized by Congress in the way the DoD centers are. So DoD gets congressionally appropriated funding in to pay for care. Now, there is non-appropriated funds that go towards the employees themselves, but there was a large NAF, non-appropriated funding pool, which we did a different Ask Me Anything on that. It could be brought up. I think that's a fair argument, that during holidays or during these days where no care is being offered and you're having to find this alternative care, since it is already appropriated and subsidized, that there should be a way to bypass that or get a reduced rate for those times. And then the last question that we had gotten into our email was whether someone would get back pay. Again, we briefly touched on this. I do not know, but we intend to try with families. So if you are a family who would have benefited from this, had it been rolled out on November 1, like it should have been, please don't hesitate to reach out to our case management. We'd love to help. So what we love and where we worry in this one, we love a higher rate cap. It's been behind where the subsidy has not changed in many years, despite childcare costs continuing to skyrocket. So we love that is now starting to shift. We do wish that for the CCYH program, the nanny program, there had been a higher rate cap implemented there as well. Many families don't know how incredibly expensive that is until they get involved in it. And it's quite shocking. That is care that you should anticipate regardless of where you live, since it has to be full-time. You have to pay your state's minimum wage. You have to meet all the other requirements and payroll and taxes and become a household employer. You can use our calculator, but we do usually not recommend that for those who are not dual officers, just because it is very expensive. That's something you're going to be looking at anywhere from $4,000 to $7,000 a month on. And so that higher rate cap would have allowed those families to get a little bit more assistance for their individual situations. Where we worry is, of course, the higher income categories. As I talked earlier, they added another one to make it more equitable. But to be fair, no one is really in those categories 1 through 3. So it would have been more equitable to kind of shift everyone down rather than to add something to the end to have people pay more, especially since it does include all of these things that are not considered generally taxable income. We don't love the unorganized rollout. It has confused a lot of families, especially during this government shutdown time, where there hasn't been any guidance issued on what should families do, what should they plan for, what should they budget for at a time when we see many not getting paychecks. That kind of rolls into the lack of communication around this. Will there be back pay? Who should they contact? All of that together, we don't love. And we don't love that the CCYH rates, of course, are stagnant. We would have liked to have seen an increase in that side as well. And I do not see any additional comments that came in. If you do have questions later, feel free to send them directly to us through our email. We are happy to answer them, and we will also drop the answers to those within the chat when this gets posted on our website. If you are a family who is in need of assistance, this will also get posted up on our website. You can click this link, submit a case management intake, and we can talk about what your individual situation is. So as always, thank you so much for joining us. This will be available later. Feel free to drop new questions in, and we're here to support.